Alright, so it's time for another quick review. This time I'm talking Pearl, which I saw yesterday at the theater on the big screen, which again is really the only way to watch one of these type movies because it's a grand spectacle. West, the absolute mad lad, has come out here with what is quite possibly one of the best horror prequels of all time, maybe one of the best prequels of all time. Holy Chiznit, Mia Goth just has a ton of range. Like I said in X, I didn't even realize that she was also playing the old hag Pearl, but now she's playing young Pearl. I think we very well might be dealing with a breakout role here, because oh my gosh, Mia Goth just has so much range, so much applicability, so much enthusiasm she brings to the role. Now, of course, Pearl was co-written by Mia Goth, along with T. West. I was very surprised to learn that Pearl was a real movie that was actually coming out and not just a goofy Tropic Thunder thing, you know, because you see the bumper for it at the end of X, credits of X, and you're like, there's no way this is real, this is too goofy an idea. I have to say, I'm gonna put T. West up there with like Ari Aster and Robert Eggers in terms of the best new horror directors of the current age of horror. But man, horror movies are just so good these days. It's rare to see a prequel done this well, with this much consistency, this much attention to detail, this much universe building. And I think the advantage that Pearl has over X is that Mia Goth really gets to shine here on her own because the cast is much smaller, the budget is the same, and the sets are the same, and the attention to detail is the same. But it's more of a character study on just Mia Goth, unlike X, which was kind of an ensemble film. It wasn't too long ago that a lot of horror movies were complete trash, like the Saw franchise, and Insidious, and The Conjuring, but now we're seeing stuff like The Lighthouse and Hereditary and X, which just nails it. Pearl differs from its predecessor in that it more or less acknowledges the fact that it's kind of slipped into being a farce at this point. Well, the first movie in the series was a pretty faithful homage to 70s slasher and grindhouse movies like Last House on the Left or Texas Chainsaw. Pearl fully acknowledges just what a ridiculous concept it is. But for a series with so many influences, which wears its influences so proudly on its sleeve, Pearl obviously draws a lot from The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, a lot of tributes and pastiches like that. It's a movie which seems profoundly original, and there's really nothing else like it on the market today. So I think that's very admirable. Something else that should definitely be given to the film is its soundtrack, which is fantastic. The main Pearl theme is kind of a blend of this melodramatic Wuthering Heights type fare, along with a Bernard Herrmann-esque score. Calls to mind a lot of Hitchcock thrillers, particularly Psycho. And of course you have that shot where she dumps the projectionist in the swamp, which of course is a reference to Psycho. And of course the themes of maternity connect a lot with Psycho as well. One aspect which must be said, along with Mia Goth's performance, the actress who plays her mom is just fantastic. You get this perfect image of this sadistic, controlling machine, and we see the themes of German alienation in the early 20th century, which is rarely touched upon, especially, you know, during World War I, when all the Germans are being painted as these fanatic Huns, and meanwhile Pearl's family is like, you know, German immigrants, German Americans. So that's a very nice thematic overtone. These days the main complaint seems to be a lack of originality in Hollywood. I think X is a good example of a series which is inherently derivative and knows how derivative it is of other movies, but at the same time creates a universe which is so well written, so captivating, so fleshed out. It feels lived in. These characters feel like they've lived entire, full, rich lives up to the point that they meet their untimely demise at the hands of Pearl's pitchfork. You have the beginnings of the pornography industry, which Pearl is familiar with all the way in X. That's an interesting theme. You have the theme of the festering pig out on the front porch, which gradually decomposes and gets eaten by maggots, which is a subtle little hint at Pearl's decomposing mental state. I like that. It's very clever filmmaking. It's very wry. This is a great example of a really well-written series, with a lot going for it. And of course, there's going to be a third movie set in the 80s. I don't know how to feel about that. I don't necessarily like the 80s, but if T. West's direction is anything to go by, I think it could be a pleasant surprise. It might be one of the very few retro movies set in the 80s that I actually like. At any rate, it's sure to be 1,000 times better than Stranger Things. But this series is notable in that, while it may not be the best series out there or anything, it is probably one of the most consistent series. It's insanely contiguous, and watching Pearl, like, months after you have watched X, in the movie theater, when it's released, it's just surreal to see this farm set again, and it's like all repaired and looks great, and the basement, and everything is kind of the same, They brought back the crocodile. The crocodile's in this, or the grandma of the crocodile in X, or something, the previous generation of the crocodile. But everyone who liked the crocodile in X will not be disappointed by the crocodile in Pearl, or alligator, or whatever it is. Together, Pearl and X, I think, make a really great double feature, and they kind of accomplish the impossible. They're really great movies to watch together. You can watch Pearl first, and then you can watch X, and watch as this pristine farm set becomes this dilapidated wreck, and Pearl's life completely falls apart along with Howard's. Or you can watch X first, and then watch Pearl, which is a little more goofy because, Pearl kind of takes the concept and makes it really, really wacky, really out there. These two movies can be watched separately. You don't need to watch X to see Pearl, and you don't need to see Pearl to see X. They operate independently of one another, but they're two parts of an equation that add together to make something, a whole. I think that's very impressive, and I think this is a great series in the making, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. I'm definitely going to watch the third one. There's no two ways about it. Anyway, yeah, just a really great film overall. It definitely doesn't have the same, pathos, or it's not really scary. It's not as scary as X, that's for sure, but I think what it lacks in genuine creeps, it makes up for in just, pure authenticity. I think this is the kind of movie that knows exactly how fun it is, and I highly recommend Pearl. I can't recommend it enough, really. It's an excellent film with an insane production, and it's just a really great film. So I hope the third one doesn't disappoint. And I was very happy that I caught this. I almost didn't, but I just happened to see the poster, Mia Goth standing there, axe in hand, and I was like, heck yes, I'm ready to see the extraordinary origin story, which is how this movie was advertised to the masses. I couldn't agree more. Pearl is an iconic horror villain, and in the decades ahead, I'm sure she'll go up there with Leatherface and flippin' Michael Myers in terms of the best slashers of all time. I really have no doubt about it. So that's my review of Pearl. My thoughts on the film. It gets quite crazy. So I definitely recommend it. Go watch it. You will not regret it. It's fantastic. It's really, really, really flippin' good. And it does not disappoint.